If you guys need any cards, packs, sleeves, anything of that nature, shop on TCG Player using my affiliate link in the description. What's good, YouTube? Today we had a big discussion in the team Discord about what the best and worst battle recruiters in the format were. So I figured I would do a little tier list and kind of get my thoughts out there about that. So that's what we're doing. We've defined a battle recruiter here as monsters that when they're destroyed by battle, they special summon something from the deck, and there has to be like multiple targets. They can't just summon like themselves or whatever, like Troop Dragon or Nimble Mamanga. There's like a lot of cards like that actually. So we are excluding those specifically from our definition, and we have 17 here. I think there might be more that I missed, but these are the 17 we're going to be looking at here today. So I've yet to rename the tiers, which maybe I'll do as we go. S tier can be like something like this, just like cards that have a ton of good targets, like a ton. So speaking of which, yeah, this guy, pretty nuts. So this gets DD Warrior Lady, gets like everything in the entire fairy deck. It's honest. It can get Cyber Valley. I mean, DD Warrior Lady is just nuts. It can get like Nova Summon. It floats into another different recruiter, which is absolutely crazy. Then on top of that, it's a light fairy, so you can like pitch it with Orange Light. You can use it with Honest. It gets Christie alive. It just does so many different things. And then on top of that, it has a ton of crazy things you can float into. Like I mentioned a bunch of them already. So absolutely, I think Shining Angel is like top tier in terms of battle recruiters. And then Nova Summoner, I think, is like a tier lower. So since we're talking about fairy recruiters, yeah, this thing can put things in defense, which is nice, and might honestly be the difference between it being like down here or something. But it pretty much only gets the fairies. It doesn't get the DD Warrior Lady or any of the other like crazy things you can do with Shining Angel. So just being a lot less or a lot more specific definitely hurts it. Definitely makes it worse, but it is still a light fairy, still has some decent things you can go into, and like I said, it can put things in defense, which is pretty cool. So Nova Summoner going to be up here. Still think it's a pretty good card. Mother Grizzly. Honestly, this card is not played in anything, and it's kind of weird because it's not really because the card is terrible in a vacuum necessarily. It's just like there's no point in playing it in any of like the water decks, because like there's a lot of crazy water monsters, but they're all just like frogs or Deep Sea Diva or something. So it's like, why would you ever play Mother Grizzly? So I think we're gonna call this like the unplayed or the unplayable. Let's call it unplayable tier. Yeah, I mean, card doesn't see any play for any reason at all whatsoever in the entire format, so it kind of just has to go down here. Maybe it has more potential than like the other things that are going to go in this tier, but as far as actual practical applications, there are none for Mother Grizzly as of now. So it's going down there. What can I say? Might as well put something else in the unplayable tier while we're down here. So we're going to be looking at Test Ape. For those of you who don't know what this does, it's a battle recruiter that special summons a GB. Now, it should be pretty obvious why this is useless. Like, the GB's already just special every other GB. Why the heck do you need a battle recruiter to search one? It's just completely pointless card. There's absolutely no reason for anyone to ever play this in GBs, and as far as I'm aware, no GB players ever played this card. At least like not prominently in any capacity. So yeah, unplayable tier for you. What do we want to look at next? How about Howling Insect? This one is interesting. It's like there's a couple recruiters on here that I think of as like they're good, but in like a bad deck. Maybe that's what this tier should be. We'll call this good in a bad deck. And now that I think about it, going by this theme, I think this tier could be like bad in a bad deck. Like, does this make sense to everyone? So, like, Howling Insect can be here because it's good in the insect deck. And then Flying Kamakuri just like is only there because it's an insect and it doesn't actually float into anything because it only gets wins and there's no useful win targets in the entire format that I know of. So it can be like the bad in a bad deck one, which is obviously a tier below this, or it's just like, yeah, you gotta play this in the insect deck, but it's so much worse than this. It's just so much worse. Yeah, I like that. I like that scheme. Let's go with this. So Howling Insect, good in a bad deck, and then this one is worse. It's bad in a bad deck. makes sense to everyone. Yeah, Flying Kamikuri just doesn't get anything. Like, I can't think of a single wind monster you actually want to get. It just floats into itself, and you play it in that deck because it's an insect, I guess. So, but the insect deck isn't even that good. Can look at Emmerblade. I think this is like a prototypical good and a bad deck. Obviously, Saber's nowhere near top tier in the meta as a threat right now, and probably never will be. Just loses too hard to a lot of stuff. Like, really bad matchup in the Hero Beat and Blackwings, especially, which are very prominent decks right now. Probably a bad Frog matchup, too. Although that one is, like, maybe a little bit more coin flippy. But, yeah, Emmer's Blade's pretty nuts, though. It can, like, float into Airbellum, which is 16, which is a cool thing, because most of the battle recruiters can only get small stuff. And I think it can put things in defense, too, which is also crazy. It's kind of like Pyramid Turtle in that sense, where they can both get things. They're just, like, randomly bigger, and they can also put things in defense, which is really nuts. So, Emmer's Blade is pretty darn good, but you can only play it in X-Sabers. There's absolutely no way to even try to apply it outside of X-Sabers in any way. So, it's going to be going in this tier. Probably, like, definitive top of this tier, like, by far, not even close, though. So, yeah. Mystic Tomato, easy top tier. I mean, it's a dark plant, which is like kind of just as good, if not better, than being a light fairy. It has tons of good targets. It can get into Sangan. It can get into Krebon's Plague if you wanted to go that route. You can go into Mali. You can go into just like so many things. You can get into Monk for Cat. You can get into this just like endless. You can go Armageddonite, send something. So there's a lot of cool things. Most of the tomato things you get are like not utility monsters, but like things that set up for bigger plays, I guess. So maybe it's kind of like inferior in that way. That's not necessarily a weakness, though. I mean, it can be perceived that way because the stuff you get off tomato doesn't necessarily do anything by itself. But there are a lot of really good targets out there. And it is a dark plant, which is just obviously very nice. You use it with Mark. You can get it off Lone Fire. You use it with Allure. You can use it with Dad. So just very solid top tier battle recruiter there. Masked Dragon. This one is tough. I kind of want to put it down here. I feel like Disaster Dragon could maybe get away with not even playing this. Is there another good dragon you could throw in? The problem is there's probably not like enough good dragons, so you're just kind of stuck playing with this only to get Totem and Exploder, which are just like super mediocre targets to search. And like being a battle recruiter doesn't even really fit with that deck's playstyle whatsoever, but I guess you just kind of have to play it because there's nothing else. So I would say bad in a bad deck, probably pretty fair. I feel like this card sucks. Like, I can put things in defense, I guess, which is cool. So, but is it? It's probably worse than Howling Insect is. Maybe you could say Disaster Dragon's better than the Insect deck, and you're probably right. But I don't know if it's that much better to compensate for the fact that, like, the card is just not good. It doesn't, like, synergize with that deck's playstyle, and there are only 2 targets, and the 2 targets aren't even good. Like, I get going into Exploder is just so mediocre compared to, like, these things up here that can go into Warrior Lady and like, Grand Mole and stuff. In terms of problem solving, Exploder's so much worse. You have to be able to crash it, first of all, and then, like, it just destroys things and sends them to the graveyard, which is, like, a terrible form of removal compared to floating into, like, a DD Warrior Lady. And then Totem Dragon is just, like a Treeborn Frog. It's, like, it's honestly worse than Treeborn Frog, or, maybe it's more, like, similar. So, it'd be kind of like Mother Grizzly into Treeborn or something. It's just, like, whatever, you know? Not that great. Not that great at all, so this might be controversial, but I'm putting it down here. Let's see. Shien's Foot Soldier, I think this is. This is like the worst one in the unplayable tier so far, I think. This thing gets 6 Samurais, but it only gets level 3 or lower. So you have to get like Yaichi or something. It's just so bad. And then also it's just like, kind of like Test Ape. You just never even play this in 6 Sams. And 6 Sams are like a terrible deck too. They're like tier 4 or something in the format, and yeah, you would just never even play this card in that deck, even if you could get level 4s off of it, which you actually can't. You can only get level 3 or lower, which is man, that's bad. So bottom of unplayable for you. Stygian Street Patrol, I'm gonna get shit for this, but Um, I've played a couple decks with this card, and every time I do, it feels like this thing is the best card in the whole deck. It's like a battle recruiter that's a tuner, which is pretty cool, and it can put things in defense. It probably has like worse targets than these other things, but I mean, you can get like Grave Squirmer, which is moderately better-ish than Exploder Dragon. Maybe you can get I don't remember what all the targets are played. Obviously, it gets into itself. You can play like Mad Reloaders. I've played some weird builds that did stuff with this card, and yeah, the targets are like pretty mid, but being like a tuner and a level 1 fiend is pretty cool actually. So, and a dark monster, of course. Just being a dark monster automatically elevates everything. I'm gonna throw it, maybe down bottom of this tier. Maybe this was Cope putting it above Howling Insect, but I honestly think that the decks I've played this card in, it felt pretty solid. So we're gonna put it in good in a bad deck. UFO Turtle. This is like only for Lone Fire, right? That being said, going into Lone Fire is pretty good, but it's only for Lone Fire. Like, you're just playing this in like weird, crazy Gigaplant decks to get to Lone Fire more consistently or something, right? Like, that's the only possible reason for playing this thing. It's probably, I don't know. I could throw it like right here. I think that's reasonable. I do think the decks that play it are generally bad, and also you could like do some crazy stuff with Super Solar Nutrient if you just wanted to get to Lone Fire too. So there's alternate paths. Maybe we'll call it good in a bad deck just because floating into Lone Fire is good though. Yeah, I think we can let it be here. All right. Pyramid Turtle. I'm gonna put it above Tomato. Like I said earlier, this thing can float into big stuff. You can float into like Illblood or Zombie Master or even Mizuki if that's the appropriate play. And it can put things in defense, which is nuts. And it's a zombie, which you can grab back off Zombie Master or Book of Life or whatever. So Turtle is just kind of crazy. It's not as generic as the other things in this top tier, but I think it is for sure worthy of top tier just because of what and then his stat line also means you can crash with Fossil Dino, which is really funny. So I think Turtle's got to be up there near the top. Turtle is crazy. This card. You know what? This card needs a new tier. Give me a second. Got that over with? You're going in there, buddy. Now, the reason this thing is in the worst tier, this thing actually just gets machines. They're 1500 or less when you think like, oh, that's pretty good. But you have to tribute summon this monster. This is a level 6 monster. You could just tribute summon a Caius, you know? Maybe... wait. This thing's like under 15, right? You could just float into this off something else maybe, though. That might be a deck idea for the future. But yeah, like this, the concept of a battle recruiter that you have to tribute summon is so laughably bad and stupid. Like, it's gotta be just like down here on its own. Good lord, what is going on? Alright, Apprentice Magician. This card is bad. We don't have Magician of Faith. What do you even get? You get itself, or you get like Crystal Seer, or you get like, can you get Fortune Lady Light off the, I don't know. It's I'm gonna have to call this bad in a bad deck. First of all, the decks that play it are really bad, and like the targets aren't good. Yeah, and it only specials it in face down defense, which I guess is fine because you can get the flip thing. But, and I think the requirements are super specific too. Like, it has to be really tiny, or is like a low level or something. Is it level 2 or lower? You know what? It's been a while since I read Apprentice Magician. Haven't played GOAT format in years. I'm sorry, but like, yeah, it's just super garbage in Edison. Like, nothing ever plays this, so yeah. Warrior Lady of the Late Wasteland, just like standard unplayable. Probably worse than Mother Grizzly because it's more specific, but it's better than these because you can at least imagine maybe somehow fitting this into something ever. I don't know. I don't know. It gets like 1500 or less Earth Warriors, I think. So you could search an exiled for some. It's not good. It's better than Test Ape though. Finally, we end on Giant Rat. I'm putting this up here, simply because there's like too many good targets. It's sort of being an Earth Beast isn't as good as like these other things up here, but there's just too many good things for it to not be in the top tier. Like Granville and Card Trooper, two of the craziest limited normal summons in the entire format. You just search it off this. You can go into Injection Fairy Lily if you can go into Dandelion if you need to get that into rotation. You can go into like even like weird things you wouldn't think of. Like if I want to side deck Cypher Soldier to counter Hero Beat, you can do it with that. So you can get Rescue Cat, which obviously not as good as getting Monk off Tomato, but it's still pretty good to get Rescue Cat and end on that. So I think Giant Rat for sure needs to be top tier. There's just too many good targets out there. And obviously floating to Grand Mole just like solves every problem ever. So Giant Rat, it's probably even better floating into Grand Mole than floating into like Warrior Lady. Speaking of which, you can float into DD Warrior, which is basically the same thing as floating into Warrior Lady. So Giant Rat, absolutely nuts, top tier for sure. All right, that is about gonna round out the tier list. I think I'm pretty confident in how this ended up. There's maybe a couple like down in the middle here that you could argue one way or another. But I think this is reasonably accurate. For sure, I think these four are the top tier ones. For sure, this guy deserves his own tier, like below the bottom. So anyway, let me know what you thought in the comments section below, and I'll see you next time. Peace out. As always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Furthermore, if you enjoy my content, you should think about becoming a channel member. You get access to tons of bonus content, and it's a great way to help support the channel.